Welcome to Story Harbinger, where every story brings a new perspective to life. Let's dive into today's tale. In a small, forgotten corner of the city, nestled between the noise of the world, there stood a school, an institution that had lost its shine over the years. The cracked walls and worn-out floors were a reflection of the forgotten dreams of the children who walked its halls. The teachers came, taught their lessons, and left, while the students passed through their days like shadows, often unnoticed and unheard. Among them, one man stood, almost invisible, doing his job with quiet dedication. His name, Mr. James. To most people, Mr. James was just the janitor, the one who cleaned the classrooms, the hallways, and the bathrooms. He was the unseen force that made sure the school ran smoothly but was always in the background. No one ever gave him a second thought. He wasn't part of the school's official staff, just a silent worker who blended in. But what no one knew was that he had a secret that would change everything. The secret room. Mr. James didn't just mop floors and scrub windows. Every evening, after the bell rang and the teachers and students scattered, he would stay behind. The school's corridors would empty, and silence would fall over the place like a thick fog. The janitor would change into something else. He would leave his dirty uniform behind and walk into a room no one knew existed. It wasn't much. A small, dusty classroom hidden in the back of the school, filled with old textbooks and broken desks. But to Mr. James, that room was sacred. That room held the potential to change lives. And that's exactly what he did. Every night, when the rest of the world went to sleep, he opened the door to the secret room and welcomed the children who needed him most. They weren't the privileged students who had everything handed to them. No, these were the children who often went unnoticed, the ones whose families couldn't afford tutors or after-school programs, the ones who were slipping through the cracks of society. These kids weren't seen as special. They were the children of single mothers, working-class families, and immigrant parents who struggled every day to make ends meet. The world had forgotten them, but Mr. James hadn't. He saw potential in them, raw, untapped brilliance buried beneath the weight of poverty and neglect. Every evening, when the school was bathed in the quiet hum of the night, Mr. James would unlock the classroom door and prepare to teach. He didn't have a degree in education, nor did he have the resources to offer them fancy materials. What he had was his heart, and that heart beat for these kids. He would teach them English, math, science, and history, the subjects that would open the doors to the world outside. They called him the silent hero. It wasn't a title he ever sought. In fact, he would never ask for any recognition. He never even told the kids his real name. He simply went by Mr. James. But he knew that he was doing something far greater than cleaning floors. He was giving them something they never had, a chance. The transformations. Night after night, the students came to his secret classroom, and night after night, they learned. It wasn't easy. Some of them struggled with reading, their hands trembling as they tried to pronounce words. Others had trouble with basic math. But under Mr. James' guidance, they began to change. At first, it was subtle. A new confidence in their voices. A smile that appeared when they solved a difficult problem. But over time, the transformation became more evident. The kids who had once been quiet and reserved were now eager to answer questions in class. They began to excel in their regular schoolwork, their grades improving in ways that left their teachers astonished. They no longer saw themselves as failures. They saw themselves as achievers, capable of more than they ever thought possible. There was Maya, the shy girl whose family had just arrived from Guatemala. She was struggling with English, barely able to form a sentence. But with Mr. James' patient guidance, she began to write stories in English, filling notebooks with her dreams. There was Ethan, a boy from a low-income family, who never believed he could make it past high school. Now, he was talking about applying to college, something his parents never thought possible. The word never spread. No one ever knew what Mr. James was doing. The teachers at the school noticed the changes in their students' grades, but they couldn't figure out how or why it was happening. The principal would stop by the janitor's office now and then, but Mr. James just smiled politely and kept working. His secret remained safe as it should have been. But one evening, things changed. The revelation. It was a cold, dark evening when the truth came to light. The children had gathered for their evening lessons when the principal, Ms. Carter, unexpectedly arrived at the school. She had heard rumors of strange lights glowing in one of the classrooms, lights that hadn't been turned off for hours. Concerned, she decided to investigate. She walked through the school, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallways. When she reached the back of the school, she saw the light coming from the hidden classroom. She opened the door quietly, unsure of what she would find. What she saw left her speechless. There, in the dim glow of the fluorescent lights, sat Mr. James, standing in front of a chalkboard, teaching a group of students. They were laughing, asking questions, and writing furiously in their notebooks. They were learning. The students who had once been invisible to the rest of the world, were learning, and it was all thanks to the man who no one had ever paid attention to. Miss Carter stood in the doorway for a moment, her heart swelling with both awe and disbelief. She had no idea this was happening. She watched as the children spoke passionately about their goals, about the future they now believed was possible, all because of the man who had taken the time to care. Mr. James, the janitor, had done more for these children than any teacher or institution had ever done. As she quietly closed the door and walked away, she realized something that changed her forever. Sometimes, the heroes we need aren't the ones we expect. They don't wear capes and they don't make headlines. They are the quiet ones, the invisible ones, the ones who work in the shadows, believing in the potential of others long before anyone else does. The lasting legacy. From that day on, things changed, just not in the way you might think. The students who had been tutored by Mr. James went on to graduate high school, and many of them even pursued higher education. Maya, who once couldn't speak English, became a teacher herself, helping others like her. Ethan, the boy who had never believed in himself, became a successful engineer. And Mr. James? He continued his work quietly as always. His story wasn't one of fame or recognition, but of the quiet power of one person believing in another. His legacy lived on in those he had taught, in the lives they changed, and in the way they, too, became silent heroes in their own right. Sometimes, heroes aren't the ones who stand in the spotlight. They are the ones who quietly shape the world, one lesson at a time. Thank you for watching. For more inspiring and heartwarming stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Story Harbinger. See you in the next tale.